New fund. I wondered why these didn't have page numbers on them.
Yeah, just recycle the whole batch. that was in there.
Okay,
Ready whenever you are.
thank you. All right, pitch that. All right, welcome back. We had a short little break there so we could keep moving for the afternoon. And now we are going to hear from our library director, Pam. And the library is going to be on page 87 of the general fund. So let me get there.
I'll do a quick
That's
intro.
what I thought, yeah. And Nancy, we'll let you do a quick intro.
Okay, thank you. The library, oh, sorry. I don't want it to pick up my eating, so. The library revised estimate is the same as the original budget. The library is allocated a set amount each year, and they're able to reallocate it between areas, personnel, capital, that type of thing. So the revised estimate has a realignment. 51,800 decrease in personal services, a 2,300 increase in commodities, 1,800 decrease in contractual services, and a 51,000 increase in capital outlay. Next year's budget is 33,900 higher than the current year budget, which is 2.9%, and that increases all in personal services. All the other areas remain the same in total. So Pam.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, I know we've talked a few times about what we've been doing with the pandemic, and what we've done is just put together some little infographics about what we've done, what we've been doing. It's still continuing with the pandemic, and then also just some statistical information. And then we did a fairly thorough annual report at the end of last year, which we've included here. Right now, we're really just kind of doing the same things we've been doing. We are getting people using the library. We're working on training people to use our resources remotely from their homes. We're getting a lot of Wi-Fi use. We extended the reach of our Wi-Fi so it covers the entire parking lot and the whole block, and it's on 24/7 now, so we're getting a lot of that. We're still continuing to show programs that we film and play on Facebook and play on Channel 5. And that is how we'll proceed for the near future. Other than that, we're very pleased that we're open. A lot of public libraries are not open right now, but our staff felt very strongly, and I agree that this is the time that we do need to be open. So we haven't had any problems. We haven't had anybody sick, and it's been going fairly well, although we certainly want to return to our old normal. So I thought I'd just answer questions if you have questions, or if there's anything specific you want to hear about.
Anyone? Well, I can't tell you enough, Pam, about how great of a job you guys did with thinking outside the box on programming. It's just been amazing how you guys have been able to keep up throughout
That
this
was really Betty, and it took a whole lot of convincing to get me to do it, and then people have responded very well, and I think most of you know that will be continuing in a lot of different ways, but I think we're going to talk about that at another time, and that's actually covered. All of those expenses, except for Chad, are covered in our trust budget and our computer support budget that we roll over. So none of that's included in our budget that we're talking about today.
Okay. Well, all the programming has been just great. I mean, for the whole city, but specifically for you at the library, it's been so nice. I mean, even this past summer, they did a campfire stories piece.
Yeah.
And they asked me to come do one, and Dave Bakke come and do one, and it was just, it's creative thinking.
Yeah.
Bringing the programs to the people was so great.
That's a lot of what we enjoy doing, and we've had the luxury to be able to do that, and we really appreciate that. Not all libraries get to spend a lot of time with programming.
And your Lena program, how has that been affected with the
Lena,
corona?
we were shut down with Lena for a while, and the Lena, the company that provides Lena, it's probably a nonprofit, I forget, but they did come out with a remote Lena. So it's a prepackaged series of the classes that they teach online, and we have Zoom meetings, so our participants can be a part of that. And then there are lots of places where we break, and then it's an open dialogue between Betty and Julie and the parents. So it's worked really well. My son and his wife had a baby recently, and they've been doing that from Des Moines. I make them pay tuition, but so they don't get to take anybody's spot for free. But so that has gone very, very well. They still do the taping. They send the taping to us. We upload it. It's been wonderful. Lena extended our contract because of the pandemic and because we couldn't teach for a while. So we will be covered through the end of the fiscal year. And then as part of my work with AIM, AIM Aligned Impact Muscatine, we've been real involved with the early childhood piece of that. And we've been working with the state. They have a program called Early Childhood Iowa. And Early Childhood Iowa has 5 goals, and one of those goals is early talk programs, which is exactly what Lena is. And Whitney, and I apologize, I can't remember her last name, but she's our area representative for that, and she and her committee are the ones that allocate funding. She feels, at least last June, when we found out we didn't have to apply for money from her, she felt at that point that we were highly fundable for what we'll be looking for, which this time will primarily be just the fees per child. And not only that, but before the pandemic started, Betty got permission to be considered a trainer. And Davenport has been interested in Lena, Davenport Public Library, so she could train their staff. Also, we'd like to branch out into other parts of our area of Iowa. And so we all would qualify, anybody that would be involved in that. We would qualify because Betty's a trainer, but then also any library that we worked with would qualify for about a $25 off curriculum cost per child. So that can be fairly substantial. So that's our plan for continued funding. We really appreciate the funding we got from the Community Foundation through the Public Health Fund. But we know that's not a way that they want to continue funding this because there's a lot of needs from the fire department and first responders and health people that they need those funds for other things as well, even though early literacy is considered a public health issue.
So some of you may remember Early Childhood Iowa, Muscatine County started out being called Empowerment. So we had an empowerment board, and that was just many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. The state used to fund directly programs like this, and they decided that each community knew their own community the best. So they asked everybody to come up with an empowerment board, and then they funneled the money to them and then let that board. Now they're called Early Childhood Iowa, Muscatine County. So you're saying they're going to fund you without even having to fill out a grant? They're going to fund you
we'll have to write a grant,
Okay.
but Whitney felt certain that we fell within the parameters and the amount of money we would be asking for. I don't know if our next ask will be a 2-year ask or a 1-year ask. We have to find out how Lena wants to do it, but it will be less than our initial ask because we have the equipment. We haven't lost recorders. We haven't lost things like that. So, and we don't have the training expense. So I don't know what it will be, but she felt the state would likely be able to fund it 100%. That's a little deceptive though, because most people or most organizations that are involved with Lena, they hire their own teachers who come in. They're not really a part of either their school system or their public health system or whatever. And we don't do that. We've been fortunate enough to be able to absorb the cost of the teaching and administration with our own staffing budget. So we're really looking at the cost for it'll be about $175 per child. So it's a guesstimate as to how many, and they're really good about rolling over. So if we overestimate, we don't do that much, I'm sure they'd let the those go forward.
Sure. Great.
So yeah,
Continuity, program continuity, that's great.
Yeah, we've also been extremely pleased because we're getting a lot of new residents, and we're getting, not only are we getting, we have not done an entire class in Spanish yet, because the people we get that speak Spanish are also English speakers, and they're quite fluent. But we've gotten a couple of families that are French speakers and are not fluent, and we've used other library patrons who are fluent in French to interpret. And that's been really kind of cool. But again, we're still seeing a very large range in the socioeconomic pattern of the families involved in our classes.
Right.
We're getting, and this time we're starting to do more recruiting directly with like the schools, early childhood program. We're also working with early Head Start. And I know that Betty's going to start recruiting from some of the preschools in the area. Now, it won't be during preschool, but that will be a way that we're reaching out. So we're trying to reach out to the ones that are most needed, but one of the things we really like doing is bringing groups of people together who aren't always together, because they do become quite close, and it's nice. I think it's a very valuable thing.
And I think it's great how you attract families from all backgrounds, because everybody needs support in that area,
Oh, yeah.
whether you're on the low socioeconomic or the high.
Exactly. And yeah, and Betty and Julie are just amazing with that. And we've also added, she's not a new staff member, but she moved to full-time. Jenny, of course, now I'm going to forget her last name again, but Jenny
Howell.
Thank you. Jenny Howell, who is a qualified learning disability teacher. And so she's spending quite a bit of time in the children's department now since we've made her full-time. And she is an excellent resource for parents. Betty is a parent of special needs children, but it's always nice to have that professional input as well. And, you know, it can be a very tough thing to do to parent a special needs child, no matter what those needs actually are. So it's a very nice support that you can get just with a phone call or drop in or whatever. So we've been very fortunate.
Whitney's last name is Howell, too,
Thank
by the
you.
way.
And if somebody kept writing it Whitney Houston, and I kept going, it
Well, it's
took
an
me so
H.
long to figure out why I thought that name seemed familiar, but wrong.
And I just love how you were able to partner with the families in the community that struggled with having Wi-Fi services this past year.
It's really interesting, because if you do come by early in the morning or later in the evening, you will see people parked in the parking lot
yeah.
just downloading maybe a show they want to stream, maybe they're doing their email, I don't know, but not everyone can afford Wi-Fi. I know I don't get cable TV, but I pay a lot of money for my Wi-Fi. I'm not sure it's I probably could go down, but I never have any problems.
There you go. Any other questions or comments for Pam?
Just
What a
keep being
great service.
creative.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's what we like best. And we really do appreciate all of your support. And this is a tough budget year for me. I've had some health issues, and Nancy and Leanna especially were extremely very, very supportive and tolerant. And Carol has been that way too. So I really appreciate it. And one last shout out is we can't do our job without your computer people. We're very happy we don't pay for them, but
Oh,
we
yeah.
use them all the time. And we have a ton of computers, and with the rollover money, we're fortunate that we're able to keep them in good shape and replace them when necessary. But even still, we see Matt most every day, and we see John too. I don't always see John because he's often in the server room, but we use your computer people, and they're amazing, so thank
And did you present at county last week, or a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago?
And
so
I
that,
asked for a 4% raise, that's what they told me.
oh, good.
At county, yeah, we did the math wrong.
Very
Yes,
good.
we presented at county. The county is always very supportive. The county, we cannot bill. We have arrangements with a number of townships in Illinois that we bill directly, and we tell them what they have to pay us.
Right.
And every year we increase it by about 3.5%. It's extremely low, but it's been a very long-term relationship. And then we contract with Fruitland. We always bill Fruitland an extra 3.5% per year. But the county is required to pay for library services for their people that do not live in an area that provides a library and an incorporated area. And they fund all 3 libraries. They tend to fund us lately between about $120,000 a year, which is a substantial portion of our budget. And we do see a lot of residents. Of course, we see tons of people who are across the bypass. But then we also get a lot of people who maybe work in Muscatine or come and shop in Muscatine and use our services. And we get a lot of people that have a library card and use our services from home. So, and I know it's not equitable if you look at the cost per person that we serve with the county funding. But if you look at the state code, the requirements are extremely low. And when I talk to other libraries, it's obscene what counties pay other libraries to provide those services. So we're always extremely grateful for the fact that they often give us an increase. And they give us a good basic level anyway, so.
And they always have good things to say about your services.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're very, we have good relationships with the county.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Pam?
I hope you get to get home before the snow.
Yeah. Let's see. We are going to move on to Cablevision, page 94 of the general fund. Who's talking about that?
I'll just do a short intro and then Carol will take over.
Okay.
The revised estimate for the current year is the same as the original budget. Most of this budget is the agreement with MCC for the cable broadcasting services, and there's some minor amounts for maintenance on the equipment. Next year, though, the request is for a $5,000 increase, 25%. That $5,000 is to upgrade some equipment in the council chambers here. And Carol probably knows more about that.
I don't really know a whole lot more.
Oh.
I'm responsible for updating this budget, and so when I did, I asked Kevin to reach out to MCC to see if there were any capital needs, and they sent me some information around maybe some equipment that is a little dated that we need to update to make sure, particularly when we're offering hybrid meetings, that we can do that with a lot of clarity and you know, so it's related to that. If you wanted to get in the technical details, I can't tell you the specifics, but yeah, I could get those if you want. And that came from Chad Bishop, and I do have on my calendar time to meet with Chad and Naomi DeWinter just to talk over our arrangement and see if there are any opportunities to do things differently or better. So we are having those kind of conversations. Yep.
I would be curious what the hardware that they're suggesting is.
I can get you that.
Like,
Yeah,
it-
they
not-
sent me an email about it.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Great.
More for
Last-
curiosity than, anything, but, yeah.
The last time I talked to them about it, and I don't even know why it came up, but it was something with our equipment being older and not jiving with MPW's as well, and that's why we were getting some issues.
I have that information. I'll get it sent to you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we will be done with cable television. Nothing else is changing, it doesn't look like. Is it, on the cable television, do they do, when we do the virtual, they still have a role in that?
They make sure it's broadcast on TV, on the cable, on the public access channel. Yep.
So we pay the same, even though we're not meeting in person and they don't have to have
I don't
anybody?
know if it's an additional, I don't think,
There's
Or
a
is it less?
There's a base amount in the agreement and an additional amount for special programming. There's a good chance we won't do much with the special programming, but I think the base amount,
yeah, I'm not aware of additional charge to do it virtually. I mean, you're not increasing the number of meetings, really. It's to be able to, broadcast. So I think it's just the flat fee, yeah.
Yeah, because Jeremy still, I think, comes down here and runs
That's
the
what I was
equipment,
wondering.
Yeah, he does.
Do
even though
they
we're
do
not
that?
here. Yeah.
Okay,
They do.
gotcha.
Wouldn't we incur additional charges, like, our meeting Tuesday, we might be here in person, but the public is on, so is that considered a special?
I'll have to check into that. We're putting it on YouTube. We're not broadcasting it on the cable access channel. I don't know if there's an additional fee for that, but I can find out. I mean, he is here today, so.
Sure.
But maybe it might be something we should be doing.
Because they were never here before, and so this might be an added.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if we're only doing YouTube now, a lot of people don't have access to YouTube. Maybe we should be
Channel 9?
on the access channel so people can see it. Even if they don't see it live, they can watch it later and when it shows on a broadcast schedule.
And that's free Channel 9's free broadcasting.
Okay.
Or two, not 9, 2,
Anyway, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
out loud.
If you have cable though, right?
if you have cable, yeah.
Yeah, that's another, Gage Houston and I have been talking about, they're looking at all of our local access channels, and we have 3 now, with the addition of the library's additional channel, and so they're launching an effort to just evaluate that and see if there are opportunities for some efficiencies, I would say.
Great.
Good.
Next, we have Melanie. We're going to hear from the Muscatine Art Center. Nancy, are you starting this off again? And we're going to be
Yes.
on page 98 of the general fund.
The revised estimate is $1,600 more than the original budget. Personal services are up $900, a merit adjustment. Commodities, $300 more, and contractual services, $400 more. Next year, $11,500 increase, 2.7%. Personal services increased by $13,100, 3.6%. Commodities increased by $1,000. Contractual services increased by $1,700. And most of that is due to the increase in the fine arts insurance. And then capital outlay decreased by $4,300. And then the budget continues to include $10,000 in the annual grant from the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs. And that's been a pretty secure funding source. So Melanie,
We'd love to hear about all the good things.
Sure. Well, first I'll point out, I do have my board president here in council chambers, and then I have several board members who are joining us online. Arzu Baharani, Brian Walter, Mark Latta, and John Moravik. So I appreciate their support and coming and participating virtually and in person. It's, for us, a status quo budget. The Muscatine Arts Center has 4 full-time employees, including me as director. There's a handful of part-time employees. We do appreciate the help that's provided through other city departments, especially Parks and Rec and Buildings and Grounds, who help with our facilities and the property. You know, I've presented to council a couple updates since we've been in the middle of COVID-19. I'm sure you're aware that our attendance numbers are not what they would ordinarily be. However, if you were to, you know, look at calendar year by calendar year, our numbers, if you had gone, you know, just for January 1 through December 31 of 2019 were really, really strong. So the addition of our program coordinator up to full-time was making a huge difference. And in these days of having to be available in person and online and, you know, pivoting in all sorts of different and interesting ways, it's been really critical that we've had, you know, a full-time program coordinator. So that support is very much appreciated. We've offered quite a few online experiences, some that have been shared through the cable channel. We presented our Civil War program, which was originally a school outreach program for middle schoolers using actors portraying Daniel Parvin and his wife Sarah. So we converted that from a classroom presentation, which we knew wasn't going to work this year, into a video project. And in that manner, we were able to share it with a broader audience than, just school children and teachers. So that's something that we'll continue to use moving forward. We've had a couple other sort of virtual experiences with a concert with Juan Carlos Mendoza in partnership with Living Proof Exhibit. They've been a longtime partner to us. They provide programming for people who have been touched by cancer. So we were able to share those on local cable. And then most recently, our New Year's Eve celebration for kids. So we've all picked up some video skills, editing and getting comfortable in front of the camera and doing those types of things. It is really hard for us to tell how many people see all of our content because it's on YouTube, it's on our website, it's shared on Facebook, then it's on local cable for some of them. So it's hard for us to come up with a good number. So when you're looking at our attendance for this period while we're in COVID-19, our numbers mostly reflect participation that is taking place in person or where we know for certain that people have, say, maybe picked up supplies in advance and are participating at home, or they're meeting up at a very specific time and so we didn't want to have the online participation really kind of skew our numbers going into the future. So, we most recently maybe kind of estimated that with some of our online and cable programs that there's probably at least 18,000 that we've reached that way, but we're not building that into our attendance, if that makes sense. So that next year, we can distinguish between, these are in-person visits and things that make sense. So I don't know if you have any questions about our response to COVID-19. We did apply to the state for some emergency funding early back in May, and we received $4,500 to help with putting some online content together. We hired an intern to help us with that, and also to kind of offset some loss of revenue for our Friends organization. Let's see, there was a bigger grant opportunity also offered through the state for COVID relief, but as we learned more about it and sort of the restrictions as a municipal organization, it didn't seem like there would be much that we could actually capture in that way. So we did not apply to that. Just yesterday, I submitted our grant application for the Japanese garden project. So we're asking for $125,000 for that project. And we've had some other smaller grants that have come in or are pending currently. So we continue to seek out those grant funds, and they're really important for being able to implement programs and other types of special projects.
Are you really confident that we have a really good shot on the Japanese garden?
As good as we can,
That's what I
hope.
was thinking too.
Yeah, we have a really wonderful partnership with Heidi Homan at Iowa State University. And, the further we dig into this project, the more, kind of really remarkable it is that we have a garden like this that dates to pre-World War II in Muscatine. There are not many Japanese gardens from that era in all of the United States, but especially in the Midwest. So it's really amazing that we have this. And we're looking forward to doing a little bit more research and sharing some information. If we're not successful with this grant application, we're going to continue looking for a way to fund that project.
Who is that?
Somebody new called into the meeting on the GoToMeeting, and it's a phone that needs to be muted probably. If,
Kevin, can you mute the callers?
Yeah, caller
please?
6 for sure.
He may be trying.
I say if you're connected by phone and
I'll text-
you know
I'll
you might have some background noise, please hit *6 on your phone to mute yourself.
Sorry about that, Melanie.
Oh, that's
Please
okay.
continue.
Yeah, so yeah, we're hopeful for the Japanese garden project, and we've got a really great plan for that garden, and we look forward to digging in a little deeper on all of that. Let's see, there's been some other bigger projects in the works too. Last year, with funds through the Muscatine Arts Center Support Foundation, it was a big quest from Mary Jo Stanley. We were able to commission David Zahn to do a bronze. It's 7.5 feet, and the sculpture is finished. It's in storage right now, and we also have found out that through that same funding mechanism, we're going to do some landscaping in the area where that's going to be installed. So that's right in front of the Jane House Foundation. So it's not property that was original to Laura Musser McCollum. It's the adjacent property. So we're hopeful that that project will be completed this summer. It seems like we're in good shape for that. And we've been trying to make use of kind of the slower time as far as people physically walking into our facility. So we've taken on a few projects. There was a room up on the second floor of the house that had some really old carpeting installed on the walls for hanging, and so we replaced that this last October. We're going to do some tweaks to the studio, a few improvements there this February. And that's also funded through the Support Foundation with funds from a private donor for that. And then we have also, about a year or two ago, we were part of the Collections Assessment for Preservation Program, and we received a report back on some things we needed to address. So we've started to do that. We put up UV film on, I don't know how many windows, over January actually. Installed some additional data loggers to monitor temperature and humidity. We're purchasing a light meter reader, which is more expensive than you'd think, but necessary for what we need to do. And again, those are funds that are coming through the Muscatine Arts Center Support Foundation Fund that were earmarked for implementing the projects that were recommended through the CAP assessment. And we are also in the process of going through reaccreditation through the American Alliance of Museums. We submitted all of our materials in October, and we had just a couple minor comments come back from staff with the American Alliance of Museums, and we were able to make some quick updates to a few documents, and now all of our materials have been kind of approved and are going on to the peer reviewers. We will have a virtual site visit, which is, kind of unusual, but that will take place the beginning of March. So we'll be doing some virtual tours of the facility, both what visitors can see and everything behind the scenes. So that in itself, getting that together is kind of a big undertaking. Other news, we also last spring led the efforts to secure Muscatine as the location for the Iowa Museum Association Conference in 2022. So we'll have some work to do with that, starting pretty quickly actually, to get together the program, and we'll work with the Merrill Hotel as a conference hotel for that, and we'll work with the CVB and other in the sort of other destinations here in Muscatine to put together a program and work with the IMA, the Iowa Museum Association Board, for that. And then, of course, we have the couple of public art projects too. February 1st is the deadline for local groups to apply for consideration for the murals. And we're hearing back from a few. They have just a couple more days yet to get those in. And I've heard from 3 or 4 artists so far who have already either put in their materials for consideration for the roundabout or are in the process of doing so. And I hope that their deadline is March 1st. So I hope to see more from that too. I guess those are highlights. I did prepare a more lengthy document and, came back and shifted this so that it's more concise. But if anybody wants more details on all the things we do, I'm happy to provide that. I think you all are sticking our newsletter as we have those come out quarterly in mailboxes here in City Hall. So I don't know if you have questions or concerns.
I would just say, if you haven't taken a tour of the Art Center, Melanie was kind enough to give me a behind-the-scenes tour, and they have a fabulous collection of art there. So if it's not, it doesn't even scratch the surface, really, what's on display. So if you get a chance to do that, do, because it's really pretty impressive.
We are very blessed for a community our size, and I think most of us are well aware of that. How did the morning dresses go over?
Really well. Of course, attendance is down overall, but the comments that we were hearing back from people, they, thoroughly enjoyed the exhibition. And not only did you get to see some wonderful wedding and morning dresses, but there was a lot of local history built into that, and also people were surprised by some of the traditions associated with mourning and how long women had to wear, the black garb and all. So we had a lot of great comments on that. That show just ended, about 2 weeks ago, and we were in the process of putting up our collection of quilts from the 19th and 20th centuries. And those also have, for the people who enjoyed the dresses, there are 11 prairie dresses worn by Muscatine women in the mid-1800s that are part of that exhibit as well. So some really wonderful objects and again, some great local history that's woven into the materials, and with the...
I hope you can do the wedding and morning dresses again after COVID. I think there were a lot of people who really wanted to go that didn't feel quite safe and comfortable yet to get out. So hopefully that's when we can repeat
we
down
did
the road.
extend that show. It was originally going to come down in October, if I remember correctly, and then we extended it to January. I don't know that I could talk my staff into tackling that again. It was dressing a whole army of mannequins, and you'd be amazed what goes into putting a historic gown on a mannequin. I mean, it's all types of measuring in advance and making sure you get the right shape and size of the mannequin to start with. Some of them are custom, carved down to fit that exact dress, the waist measurements.
Wow.
And then there's paper skirts that were created to support the gowns. It was a massive undertaking. So in some ways, the fact that we were closed to the public in spring of last year was helpful, because we could pull out all those mannequins and work on them in the Stanley Gallery without worrying about people coming in and wanting to see something else on view. But yeah, people did appreciate seeing that. And we did get quite a few people coming down from the Quad Cities. There were some nice articles in the Quad City Times about that. And so yeah, it was a fun one to work on.
Oh yeah, I bet. Well, very much appreciated, all that you do
And
there.
good exhibits coming up this year too. The Lego exhibit in November is going to be huge for us. That's a much bigger undertaking than we have done, and maybe even in the history of the organization. It's a big one as far as hosting a traveling exhibition. It'll be coming in on 2 semis, so it's big for us.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
So am I to assume that we're not having an ice cream social this year?
We're thinking that we will probably push it from June to maybe closer to the start of the school year, so it might be delayed by a couple months so that we have some additional time to really figure out what's going on and if it's safe and, you know, and then for our musician friends to maybe get back to practicing before they perform in front of a big group. But, you know, we're hopeful that we can have the ice cream social sometime, probably late summer instead of aiming for June.
Okay?
Yeah.
Don't make me cry.
And we might, you know, we did do a family picnic and we pulled out the ice cream machine for that. So if nothing else, we will go that route again.
Yeah, I was.
We'll let you know when there's ice cream.
Yeah, you know, I show up for that.
Very good. Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we're gonna have Jerry. I saw him. He came early for pizza, so he's in the building.
Yeah, yeah.
Drive safe getting home, Melanie.
He was downstairs watching it, so he should know. He's just trying to make an entrance.
Yes. Thanks for this. Oh, I know, after the meeting.
Thank you.
What's with you in that chair over there? What is this?
Mike, you're welcome to sit right next to Jerry there.
The little kid chair?
Yes. Yeah, you got the hard chair.
The pilot and the co-pilot chair.
Thanks, Chief, for coming in today.
Yep.
We're gonna be on page 79 of the general fund to start, and then we'll move into ambulance after that.
Everyone knows Mike, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then also,
Thank you.
we probably have Battalion Chief Ronsheimer, Jansen, and Hillard, hopefully, online.
They're gonna be online, yep. Did we get that problem solved? Looks like it.
I think one's even out in Colorado, so.
Oh, there you go.
Skiing.
Okay. I thought he was on there.
I think he's taking a break to call in and just listen.
Gotcha.
I can't say I would do the same if I was on the slopes. So it's appreciated if he's listening.
Jerry, you always do the nicest annual reports every year. I have a whole stack. They're always so nicely done and put together and good quality.
Yeah. Compliments go out to Craig Shelf, so he's.
Oh, I remember
it's
that,
credited,
yes.
his name's on the back, so.
Yep.
It takes him about a month to gather all this stuff and put it together. Mike oversees it, and then at the end, we all sit down and edit it just to make sure that it's correct and that there's no errors or omissions, so.
Sure.
I think they get better every year, so.
Oh, yeah. And they're very detail-oriented. I really enjoy them every year. Nancy, are you gonna get started for us?
Yes. The revised estimate for the fire department is over the original budget in total by $12,100. This has the most variation in different areas than any budget. Decrease of $271,300 in personal service costs due to deferring the 3 firefighter positions. $15,500 increase in commodities, primarily for uniforms and protective equipment. $100 decrease in contractual services, and a $268,000 increase in capital outlay. The capital outlay increases for the SCBA, so that we're 90% grant funded. So there was a lot of big dollar increases and decreases, but overall it was within the intent of the budget. Next year, the requested increase is $78,600, 1.5%. Personal services costs are $34,800 higher, and that proposed budget does continue to defer 2 of the 3 positions. One of the 3 is budgeted to start in April of this year. And that again is because of the financial constraints in the general fund. I think,
So the ones we approved last year that didn't get filled, we're still not gonna fill them?
except for 1, correct.
Fill in one of the 3.
Okay.
And that was one of the items that helped us balance this budget, was to continue to defer some of those positions. Jerry, if you want to do highlights?
Yeah, I think the highlights for the accomplishments, this is similar like everybody else that you heard give their presentations, is last year with COVID kind of changed the way that we did things. I think especially for the fire department being on the front lines, going in people's houses and transporting these patients, it just changed how we did business. We changed our arrival to more of a scout system where you try to only send one person up to the patient to evaluate. Even though that we're pre-screening through the dispatch center, we're still trying to limit the number of people that are exposed to people that have COVID. So it's just changed the way that we operate as an ambulance service. It's changed our procedures and protocols because of airway concerns, trying to make sure that we're not contaminating ourselves or getting everything out into the air. So some of the things with intubations and procedures for nebulizers and stuff kind of changed how we did things, so we do it more safely now. But again, our staff, I think, has done a wonderful job dealing with this, because again, it's just kind of changed what we do every day. I would say for 40% of our staff have actually had COVID and have recovered from COVID. We just finished up the second dose of the vaccine for those that chose to get it. So again, we're kind of getting back to some sort of normalcy, but I think the personal protective equipment, some of the procedures that we do in the field, and the nonstop cleaning and disinfecting of the ambulances and the equipment, I think is going to go on and change how we do things forever. Even when COVID's kind of under control, I think this is going to be kind of the new norm for us. So COVID was a big part of last year. One of the other things I wanted to point out was the successful AFG grant that Battalion Chief Gary Ronsheimer wrote. This was something we talked about last year, that we knew it was a big expense. And we said if we didn't get it through an AFG grant, that we would have to come back this year and budget for it. So again, I think congrats to Gary with the successful grant, which saved us $242,200 that we aren't asking for this year. The way that we do public education has changed also with COVID. We normally are very involved in the school systems for preschool, kindergarten, first, third, and fifth grade in the school systems, and when they tour the fire station, we do the tour, public safety talks, and the Freddy show. All that was suspended, but I think our staff did a good job of thinking outside the box for how do we deliver pub ed. We didn't do our EMS week that we normally do at Farm and Fleet. We canceled the open house, which is a big hit, and the people love that. But we still wanted to address some of the fire prevention, safety themes, and so they came up with a couple videos. And so I'll let Mike kind of talk about the videos and the YouTube channel.
So yeah, what they did is basically they tried to go through and do virtual tours and some virtual pub ed things. They went ahead and we kicked that out on Facebook, and we worked with Kevin Jennison to go ahead and put that on YouTube. And in our discussions, Kevin basically said, well, what about a YouTube channel? That way it's out there and somebody can go back and look at it any time, versus if it's a Facebook post, you have to scroll through all the history to be able to see it. So we've created a YouTube channel as well. So anybody and everybody that's interested, go ahead and look that up, and you can see some of our firefighters in action walking around the fire station.
I think the other two things that I kind of had jotted down was we created a new wellness fitness initiative for safety and health of our members, and this came out of our labor management committee. So it was labor and management working together on how can we implement something to make sure that we're all safe and healthy and able to do the job. So this was kind of a win-win for everyone on the fire department. We did that towards the end of last year. So I think that was a big hit, so we're going to continue to do that. And then one of the other things I wanted to mention is not just participating in the virtual EOC like I did with the mayor last year, but for dealing with COVID, you know, it's different when you're a full-time department. But what I kind of did last year was try to assist the volunteer ambulance services and fire departments because they didn't have either the expertise or they weren't able to stay on top of stuff. So part of my job was just making sure that I was kind of that liaison and helping communicate and share information with all of our volunteer fire departments and ambulance services in the county. So a lot of meetings, a lot of emails. We've kind of have got back to normal on that. We're still having bi-weekly meetings with the hospital, dealing with COVID and patients and treatment and transfers and stuff like that, but we'll talk a little bit more when we get to the ambulance side of that. But that was kind of the big things that I kind of had written down just kind of for accomplishments. I don't know if you have any questions or like on the objectives, they're leaning towards trying to better serve our customers with Mike working with folks over here at City Hall and trying to improve the customer experience between the fire department, fire marshal, and code enforcement and stuff like that. So I think we're seeing a lot of good improvements there. Otherwise, if you have any questions about the capital outlay, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. We would have asked for the voice amps in the grant, but when you read the grant instructions, the one thing that it said is that you can't put in for the Bluetooth technology for this, so we weren't able to ask for it, so that's why we're asking for it in the capital outlay. But it is needed with the new air packs for the Bluetooth technology, so we can communicate clearly and be hands-free with our radio, so that's why we're asking for that. And there'd be 3 other things that you won't see here because it has a different funding source, but it's in the budget, it's approved. You'll see it later on, but the new engine is in there under the 2022 bond issue, and then there's 2 items under building and grounds that it's under their budget, but it's going to be at the fire station, and that's the hood system over the stove and a bathroom remodel that's really needed. So otherwise, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have on fire department operations or the objectives.
Well, I would like to start by thanking you guys for all the good that you did this whole year. I mean, I know you were a big instrumental part in helping with the hazard mitigation plan for the entire county. I mean, that, we recently got that through, and you guys had a lot of legwork to do when it comes to that. The 9/11 memorial that you guys did for the community, I thought was outstanding for people to be able to come and help join in that remembrance of all of the firefighters. And always, the Mike Cruz memorial that you guys do is always so nice. But the way you guys are able to reach out to the community and try to help with prevention, with the Red Cross and all the different we've worked on that sound alarm project over the years, and it's just getting better and better where more and more people are having access in their homes to making sure they have the smoke alarms. So win-win for everybody. I would like to ask, what percentage of your firefighters did opt to go with the vaccinations?
I think it was 40%.
40?
Yeah, I think it was 40, yeah.
40.
So, and I think we were at 65 or 66 that got the regular annual flu shot, which was a higher increase than we normally saw, so.
I know, talking to Chris Jasper with Muscom, that for a while we were given a code to you guys when you were called out to go. Are they still given the code?
Yes, we call that a gold alert, and it's mentioned in the annual report. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought we were still doing that.
Yep,
but-
and that's
yep.
pretty standard across. That's the recommendation that CDC and that they give out to all the 911 centers.
And that's something that Muscom does for us to kind of give us a heads up. But like Jerry said earlier, sometimes things fall through the cracks. And even though we respond to a situation and it's not considered a gold alert from the 911 call, we go ahead and use that scout service because it does catch some of those that fall through the cracks.
Sure. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for, all of you put your own lives on the line this entire year. Not always, but specifically this year to go into people's homes that the rest of us would run away from. So thank you so much. But yet if we call, we want you there. So thank you so much. Anybody else?
Real quick.
Yes.
Jerry, was it 40% of your firefighters or 40 of your employees?
No, 40% of them chose to get the COVID vaccine.
Okay, I just didn't hear that completely. Thank you.
Yep.
And Mayor, if a house was on fire, I might run up and try to help too. I might not run away from it.
I wasn't talking about fire. I was talking about being
I'd
filled
be-
with
a little humor.
coronavirus.
I would try to stick around and help a little bit, maybe. Okay.
We'll put you to work.
Okay.
I do have a little question.
Yes, go
On here
ahead.
it said diesel diagnostic laptop. What is that?
It's, basically, it's the code where you plug in, and it'll tell you what's wrong with it, as
Okay.
opposed to us either having to tow it or send it somewhere else for them to read it. We have them for the ambulances, we just don't have them for the fire engines, so.
Okay. It's some sort of software.
Yep, if you took your car to Krieger's or somewhere else, that's what they do. They plug it in and it gives you what the code is, or you go to AutoZone, they'll do that for you. So we need that for the
I was just curious.
diesel
Thank you.
engines. Yep.
Now, Alan isn't here anymore to ask how comfortable the ambulances ride.
I have not had a single complaint on a transfer when they've been in the new transit van, so
Very
I would
good.
say that it's working.
So if Alan's watching
Yeah.
or listening,
Yep. Yep, we're coming up on a year of having that, and I think it's working out great for the long distance transfers for the comfort of the patient. So
very
How many
good.
miles are already on that thing?
I think when we were doing the budget, the mechanic said we were right at 10,000 miles, so probably just a little higher now.
That's not so bad. I thought it was gonna be a lot more.
Yeah, the limitations is we try not to send it out when there's high winds, just because of the height of it. It kind of gets blown around a little bit, but otherwise, I think it's working fine in our fleet.
I would like to just say at the end, I'm sad that we're not able to figure out the firefighters. I mean, the grant that you guys wrote, we would have had to have spent money there, and you've saved us all of that. And yet still you're not getting the firefighters. And that, that with it being a public safety thing, I think, and the morale of our team that is working so hard round the clock, I'm really concerned that we're still not able to fill those spots.
I'll let Carol answer
Sure,
first.
so the reason that we're being cautious, I guess I would say, about adding headcount, because those dollars are ongoing, they're a commitment. So Jerry and I worked on a plan to try to step up to the full 3. So we want to look at, when we get to the revised estimate, look at the budget and see where we are relative to the estimate, and then come back to council with consideration of adding a second firefighter with a third in the next budget cycle. So I think this year, over the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years, we'll be spending down the CARES local government relief funds. That's what's sort of keeping us, going in these next few years, but we can't sustain that because we won't have those dollars ongoing. So while we're able to fund capital improvements, which are one-time costs, we're being much more prudent and cautious with those ongoing expenses. So I think we'll get there. It's just it's going to be a little bit slower, the ramp up, than what maybe we thought before COVID. So.
Mayor? Thank you guys, as always. Great information, and I'm on page 19, and I really appreciate your apparatus condition report. It's sort of a really clear way to show that we've got some equipment that's in poor state. So it sounds like on the firefighter side, we have team, we have several initiatives with the firefighters that we're gonna ramp up and try to get you back to full staff. We've got equipment needs, and it sounds like we might see one of them come across the budget here in another funding source. And then we got future state, which is the new fire station. So these are long-term, we gotta build up to that.
Exactly.
But that's huge initiatives for us to get up to what a town of our size should have is for safety. So I don't wanna lose sight that there's some pieces of equipment here that are sitting in the poor. So I wanna make sure we have the replacement.
It
plan?
is.
Okay.
And when we get to the ambulance, you will see that. So with the engine being replaced, that's gonna get rid of a 1988 engine. So I mean, gonna be 33 years old. So again, I think our fleet is in good
Okay.
working order once we get these approvals done with this new fire engine. And then when we look at the ambulance budget, you'll see that there's one ambulance being bonded for and there's one being remounted. So that will be 2. We're also getting another. So all the ones that have the 250 to 270,000 miles, those will be replaced. So I think in this fiscal year, I think once this gets approved, our fleet is in good shape. And I just wanted to comment on, you know, had some really good conversations with Carol, and I think she has a good grasp of the situation for not just our wants, but what our needs are. And it was actually, my recommendation was not to hire all three at once, was to stagger them. So again, I think we're on the same page here. Yes, we would like to have them, but we understand that it's an ongoing cost and we want to be cautious. And like you had mentioned with the station, the good thing about this is that once we do wrap up and get up to 15 people, the recommendation is only that we would need 3 more to open a station in the future. So by doing this over time, it's going to help the cost when we do open up the station, whatever year that is. So.
Yeah, and we do have we have some information to bring back to council about reaffirming your commitments, desires around the facility where the new fire station would be located. So we have some additional information. Jerry has a staffing plan that's developed. So we're thinking big picture, and there's a lot of moving parts and pieces, but I think we're narrowing in on sort of the recommendations.
And this type of thing will take the big picture. It's like, here's immediate needs and here's the big picture, but that's gonna go pretty fast too. So thank you. And again, this is sort of interesting, but I'm glad to have the details behind it, because I go, okay, then we're at less risk, and I appreciate that. And thanks for your annual report.
I get calls all the time, and probably everybody here does, about the trains on the track down in South End being blocked for long periods of time, and they call the number and try to work through the process and aren't very successful. Is that ever an impact to you guys?
I would say the one time was the Huddig fire. We were delayed there, but I can say in the going on 33 years that I've been, it hasn't been an issue. We have direct contact with the dispatch center. They have direct contact with the railroad master. So if we have an issue, they get on the radio, let them know. The train, they will either break away or they will either go forward or backwards, and they'll tell us which one to go across. So I would say in my career, it's happened once. Again, we do get delayed occasionally, but all they have to do is get on the radio, and then we'll send another crew from a different direction. So I would say personally, for an emergency response person, it really hasn't been a significant issue for us. And we've had several conversations with the train folks over the years, especially after the Huddig fire. I was talking to the CEO, and I think we had pretty good customer service from them. So from us, I don't really see that it's an issue.
Good. I want to thank you too for the program that you guys started a while back. And can you give us a little bit of an update? I know you were working, you were finding a lot of people that were calling for calling 911 when it was something that really somebody else could have helped them with. It wasn't really constituting what you should call 911 for, and you guys were working on a plan to try to help link them up with other services. How's that going?
I think it's working really good. And most of it dealt with, I would say more of the lift assist, where people weren't medically hurt or they didn't need medical treatment, they just needed lifting assistance. And so, again, between the billing manager and Battalion Chief Hillard, who's in charge of ambulance operations, they have a system in place, and we kind of treat it almost the same way that we do for someone that has a fire alarm system. If you have a faulty fire alarm and we respond X amount of times, we will contact you and notify you, and there'll be a charge. The idea isn't to get revenue off of that. The idea is so that they maintain their system in working order. And we use the same concept for the lift assist. If you're not hurt, we'll come and lift you up and help you, but the idea is that we want to give you the tools so you know who to call. Is it a neighbor? Is it a church member? Is it, someone else? Is it a family member? I mean, there's times where we'll go and there'll be 6 family members sitting on the couch, but they want us to help them. And it's like, well, why didn't you help them up if they're not hurt? So I think just kind of that educational piece. Sometimes it's people that would fall in the bathroom, and it's as simple as we get with senior resources and say, hey, can you get them durable medical equipment for an extension lift on their toilet? That way they can get down and get off on their own, as opposed to getting down and then can't get back up. So we're trying to give them the resources. We have a list of other resources that will help them with names and numbers, and we give them that piece of paper. So I think it's worked great. And actually, we've shared what we've done with a lot of other fire departments in the state of Iowa, and they've kind of incorporated
I had
the same
heard
thing.
that,
So,
yeah.
so I think it's working good.
Good. And how are the sheets going I lost the name of them? You know the name of it, Jerry, the sheet that they do, that each person has to say what you're gonna do with them if, on resuscitation.
Oh, the iPost?
iPost.
Yeah, iPost.
How are those going well?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yep. Yeah, they've basically taken over for what the old DNR form used to be, so.
And are people keeping up with those?
I think so.
Good.
I haven't heard anything, and actually, I was on the statewide task force for that, and we were meeting annually to go over the stats and everything like that. In the last 2 years, we haven't even met. So I think it's pretty much implemented statewide, and so
It was
I think
quite,
it's going good.
people were quite worried about it when it first came out, but it seems like it's moved along well.
Yep.
Good. Any other questions before we move on to ambulance? Well, thank you, but we'll let you stay right there. We're gonna move to page 7 in the enterprise fund.
The revised estimate for the ambulance fund is $94,400 more than the original budget. And that overall increase is due to the additional $100,000 in money we're transferring to fund an allocated part of the fire personnel costs. Having the additional revenue from the GEMT funds allowed for that additional transfer. Capital outlay in the revised estimate is $3,500 more than what we had originally estimated. Jerry had requested for FY '22 the purchase of 7 bilateral splints. We did decide to move that to the revised estimate instead of waiting till next fiscal year. So that accounts for that increase. And there was various other increases and decreases in the revised estimate. For next year, it's $91,100, 4.3% more than the original FY '21 budget. Net effect of a $14,800 decrease in personal services, which is decreased part-time ambulance attendant hours, and with the full-time billing manager retiring, the new person's wages would be somewhat lower. $2,900 decrease in commodities, $5,600 increase in contractual services, $46,000 decrease in capital outlay, and $149,200 increase in transfers. And that again includes the additional $100,000 to fund fire staffing. Capital outlay for FY '22, Jerry already mentioned this, but it does include $160,000 to refurbish one of the ambulances. And then we're also, they did also request a new ambulance for $210,000. We're proposing to fund that out of the 2022 bond issue. So I think that covers things, and when Jerry's done, we can look at the fund statement for ambulance.
That was our plan already, to fund it out of that bond issue, wasn't it?
We have done that in the past. I don't know if we had decided, a year ago, we had decided to fund the fire engine out of the bond issue. But with a refurb and a new ambulance all being requested in the same fiscal year, the fund didn't have enough funds.
Okay.
And we have bonded for ambulances in the past.
And both of those ambulances include the power lift system in there for the cot, so.
Are we seeing an impact on our injuries as a result of having all of the power lift?
We're not gonna, I'll be honest, we're not gonna eliminate the injuries, but it has definitely helped, because there are times where we have to lift a patient where we can't use a stair chair, or we can't use the power cot, or we can't use the load system because someone's wedged in between a toilet and a wall. So you can't always use good ergonomics, but we do our best, and again, if this just prevents one, it pays for itself, so.
Absolutely. Jerry, do you have anything to add on ambulance?
Yeah, I had just a few things. One of the things I was looking at, I was pointing out, I was kind of going back to the old days, like when I started in 1988, when we did about 1,100 calls a day or 3.2 calls a day, and then I look at what we're doing now, running the ambulance service, and it's a 430% increase. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. For the last couple years, we've been over 5,000 calls. We did, kind of going back on the COVID, when it first hit in March, for the first couple months, we did see a dip in calls, and that's where people were just hesitant to call 911. They would rather stay home and be sick or have chest pain or whatever, as opposed to the unknown of what was going to happen if they got exposed while they're at the hospital. And this was, we talked about this with other ambulance service providers and fire departments, and pretty much everyone just saw a dip of people just weren't calling 911. We are back to normal and above. Our call numbers are up, and so we're definitely going to see an increase this fiscal year when we look at our call numbers. So this is just going to trend up and up. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. I thought that was kind of interesting that, used to do about 3 calls a day, and now we're doing about 14, or probably gonna be doing 15 next year, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you do 4 out-of-town transfers, do the math on 3.5 hours, and that's how long an ambulance is out of town. So these just keep on creeping up. But again, I appreciate the support for keeping our equipment for what the guys need to do their job safely and efficiently. And again, I think with these couple ambulances and the engine, I think our fleet is in good shape. So again, I appreciate the support there. I already addressed the COVID, just crazy times. One of the things, we're still the only ambulance service in Iowa that's doing the cardiac enzyme testing in the field. It's a lot of work. There's a little bit of expense to it. But I can tell you, for us, with our healthcare system in Muscatine, we have a level 4 hospital. Most specialized services get transferred out either to the Quad Cities or Iowa City. So I personally think that this cardiac enzyme testing is finding things out quickly in the field that we can get the patient to the correct destination, and that's usually a cath lab. So the testing that we're doing is really helping out our citizens that we're protecting. So I'm kind of proud of the cardiac enzyme testing that we're doing in the field. Our interfacility transports, you've heard us talk about this for years and years. This is really the revenue for our ambulance service, but it's also the strain that deals with the grind of being up all night long and being at the wheel, and the safety and the fatigue and the morale. When we first started, we basically have had a 100% increase in interfacility transfers. I think we're, 4.2 or 4.4 a day now? 4.2 a day and those are averages. So I can tell you the day after the storm, and I actually even went on an out-of-town transfer, but I think we had 11 out-of-town transfers the day after the storm. So that's just 3.5, 4 hours, you're out. Just time and time again. So on a 24-hour shift, it's crazy. But like I said, that's only going to increase. So the staffing will definitely help with that. We do have 3 firefighters in a 1-year-long paramedic program at Eastern Iowa Community College, and with us changing our hiring requirements from paramedic to EMT, because there's not enough paramedics out there to hire, we have them sign a contract that they will become a paramedic within 3 years, and we send them to school and we pay for that, and it's offset with the new wage scale that we have, because they get hired at a lower salary for the first 3 years till they become a paramedic. So even though that we're kind of upping our training and travel costs to send them to paramedic school, we're making up for it on the wages. And then they sign a contract saying that they will stay for 5 years after they get their paramedic in hand, and then it's kind of prorated down, and we're hoping at that time they'll be vested in the department that they'll want to stay here. So I think this is working, but this even puts a stress and a strain on our staffing, because right now we have 3 in school, so that's 1 off each shift, so now you're starting the day out, 1 less person during the week. Next year, we're gonna have to send 4, and then the following year, we'll send 3. So, and that will get all of our EMTs to the paramedic level. So that's gonna be a couple year progress to get these folks trained to the paramedic level.
But it really has done a lot to, it sounds like it, to address the problem we were having with turnover.
It's helping, yep.
Good.
So everything that we do is helping. So it's not just one thing, it's a
Sure,
whole
sure.
bunch of things, but we are definitely working on it. And again, we track our staffing and turnover, and you can't see it from here, but you can see our turnover is actually trending down in the last 3 years. So maybe what we've done the last couple of years, we're definitely seeing some changes now. So one of the other things I really wanted to say is the GEMT money. The revenue that we get off of that has definitely helped us out. It's helped paying for firefighters, great revenue stream through the government. And I also want to thank Leanna. Leanna has been instrumental in the cost report, and the cost report that we have to submit, I mean, is lengthy, and she does 99.9% of it. I have to sign a piece of paper and send it in. So my part's fairly easy on the cost report, but again, I'd definitely like to thank Leanna, because you have to have the cost report, they have to do the audit, they have to approve it, and then that's the revenue that you get off of that year for your uncompensated cost. So again, I just wanted to thank Leanna and Finance for their work on that. Last year generated $373,880. So, and we're just going to continue to see that moving forward.
That's for the people on Medicaid,
Medicaid, yes.
not Medicare at all?
No. Nope.
Medicare has a separate system?
Yes. Yeah. So that's pretty much all that I had to really kind of address for either accomplishments or what we're doing on the ambulance part of it. And again, we kind of talked about the capital outlay. And I think, for, the 3 ambulances that have the high mileage and the wear and tear, those are going to be taken care of with these new purchases. So I think our fleet is in good shape there. So again, I'd kind of open it up to any questions that you have on ambulance operations. The other thing that I would mention is that we did get about $42,000 in CARES funding, which has helped offset a lot of our personal protective equipment. And we did get another disinfecting machine and the face recognition for temperatures for people coming in both stations. So that's what we've used. And they said that we're going to have to do a report the end of June for what we've spent the money on. So we're making sure that we spend it down so we don't have to give any of that revenue back. So, but otherwise, I'd open it up for any questions on ambulance operations.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Are you offering any citizen involvement programs this year?
Like,
Well, the police department has a right with a cop.
Right along?
okay, yeah, okay, I wasn't exactly sure what you're asking, but yes, we do have a ride-along program, and we also will do the Citizens Academy, and we've done that. We used to do 2 separate ones, and then we said, well, they're having a hard time getting the number of people, we're having a hard time, so let's do it together. And so the last one was a joint Citizens Academy where you did half on the fire department, half on the police department. We haven't really had a lot of interest to get the number of people to hold a class. And then with COVID, we've kind of restricted everything where we've kind of shut down our living quarter area where we need to keep people out because we need our people healthy so they come to work. So that's kind of like the public education. We're not allowing the schools to come in just for that reason. We don't want them to get sick while they're at the station, but we don't want them to bring something in and get us sick neither. So we probably won't be doing any of those things probably more towards midsummer time when more people get their vaccines, and we think that this is kind of getting under control a little bit. But we're always, I mean, especially for council members, you guys can ride, and I think it's important for you guys to ride and be in the station with these guys, so you see what they do day in and day out. I know, Carol came over, I think she had some fun, even got out the window and did some rappelling.
I did. There's a photo of me. So they strapped me into some thing and made me climb over the wall.
So, but yeah, we've opened it up for council forever, especially like whenever we do any live burns. Usually once a year, every other year, someone will donate a structure to us, and as long as there's no exposures issues, if it has quality for us to train and to burn it, and it's safe for the surrounding houses, we do that. I would encourage you guys to come and participate in something like that. I think it's always good, and we've always opened it up for the news media. So I mean, I think anybody that's been a reporter that's been assigned to public safety, we've always had them involved either in a ride along or go through a recruit academy or like when we do a training burn. So I think that's just good to see what we do.
Well, and I know you've got you have the training area down there at the second fire station, and then I know I've gone down a couple of times for those and seen those sessions, and then also when they do the rescue training out on the ice.
Yes.
Yeah,
and as you mentioned, the training facility, that's something that we're trying to have a shovel-ready project for an AFG grant that will deal with the training center. They don't see the Form 11, do they?
No.
Okay. So on a Form 11, we kind of look at our asset management or what we want to ask for. So what you see for capital outlay is just this current fiscal year. We actually project it 5 years out. So 3 years out from now, we're looking at budgeting for mobile fire training containers that you can kind of move them around and use them, which I think would be great. But I want to try to get them free first through a grant, as opposed to us coming. So that's why we kind of put it a few years out. It gives us a couple years to try to get a grant instead of asking for it. But that Station 2 area is a great area for training. We have quite a few props. A lot of them we've seen at other places, and we've either recreated or built them ourselves. The idea is to eventually for the old armory to be torn down and to build a smaller classroom area. So when we offer it just not only for us, but with the federal grants, if you open your training facility up to the volunteer fire departments, then you kind of have a higher scoring. So hopefully we'd have a better chance of doing it, saying that not only is it Muscatine Fire Department's training facility and classroom where you go inside and outside and have all these props and you can do live burns, but we can bring in Fruitland, or we can bring in West Liberty, or we can bring in the other ones, and they can utilize it also. But that's kind of down the road. Right now we're just kind of working on getting the details and kind of the soft costs, so we know what we have to do. So when the grant, because the grant doesn't give you a lot of opportunity, the grant pops up like it did the other day, and we didn't have the time or the commitment to write a grant right now with everything that's going on. They only give you a couple weeks to do it, and then we have to come to council and ask you, and by the time we do it, it's like we didn't want to try to put something together unless it was high quality. So we're going to be working on a shovel-ready grant for that in the future. So.
Okay, great.
I would just add, so the model that that we're using here with the having an ambulance service and a fire department allows us to be able to provide really highly skilled, highly trained fire department that you may not otherwise find in a community of this size. So that sort of that relationship between those two funds really does leveraging that. They do the out-of-town transfers and things, but having that income helps us train and afford the type of department that we get, with this. So I just want you to know, yes, they made me rappel out the window, but that was because they can do those kinds of activities where other departments may not. So when we really need them, we have that skilled workforce here in the community. I hope the community understands the value of that asset right here.
Sure. Well, even the really high rescue you guys did a few years back. I mean, that skill level was quite high to be able to accomplish that rescue.
Yeah, it made national news, so.
So, we got the new search and rescue boat that we just bought, and it's getting tweaked a little bit, but.
We just
it's-
got an update on that yesterday.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
It's almost done anyway, so you guys will be utilizing that as well. I know we were talking about working some kinks out there.
Yep, the whole plan was that since it's a county asset under EMA, it should be first come, first served to get it, so we can resolve the problem. I mean, if someone's boat capsizes and they're hanging on the side, you want the first available person to be able to get the boat and deploy it to save the person.
Yes.
Or a bridge jumper, you want to get out. So yes, that's my understanding, is that it is a joint asset. It's under EMA, but we're all going to work together
Yep.
for training and protocols and for responses. So that's
And
my
we're working on like access for it, so right now there's like 2 keys, which that's not working, so we're working on a coding system, so
You know,
that'll be available to everybody in a real nice place in the new county building.
yep.
So that should be easily accessible to everybody. Any other questions on ambulance? I appreciate, and I was just mentioning that to the police chief also, you know, all of the ways you guys go out of your way to give good customer service to the community. You know, those little things really are meant a lot, giving a teddy bear to a child when you're transporting them to a hospital and they're in a tough, scary situation. I mean, those little things and reaching out to the community and being kind like that is really amazing.
Yeah.
It really helps
We
everyone.
got talented staff, so again, kudos to all the firefighters and paramedics that come in and do this every day. I mean, it's easy for me to sit behind a desk and, you know, do strategic planning and brainstorm and, you know, talk with Carol on, you know, how we're gonna implement things and make it better for them, but it's the firefighters and the paramedics that come to work every day that ride the fire trucks and the ambulance. They're the ones that are doing it. They make me look good.
And you can't fake these things. It's obvious that they really do care about the people.
Yeah,
And that's evident, and that's what shows, and that's what the community wants and expects and should get, and they do. So thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Can we look at the fund statement on page 14 for the ambulance fund?
Sure.
And for all the enterprise funds, we have the same format. This is what we've done for every year. 2 years of actual, the current year budget, the original department revised estimate request, the final revised estimate request, and then the requests for the upcoming year and the final recommended amounts. So actually in the revised estimate this year, our beginning balance of that 635,847 was about 300,000 higher than what we thought when we did the budget. The budget only expected a 329,000 beginning balance. A lot of that is the GEMT funds, where we had thought we would only get them for half the fiscal year, and we did end up getting them for the full fiscal year. So that's helped the ambulance fund a lot. The regular ambulance revenues are projected to be higher than what we had in the original budget too. 1,675,000 for the revised estimate, and that's right at what it was actual FY 19-20. So the ending balance in the revised estimate came down to 366,000 compared to our budget estimate, which was only 67,000. And then going into the far right-hand column, starting out with a higher amount, we did allow for small rate increases. So regular ambulance at 1.7 million in revenues, 250 for GMT, the township money, and then expenditures including the one ambulance refurb, the 2,220,000, leaves us 127,000 in the fund balance. We like to have that balance in that it includes accruals. So for services rendered, but we don't have the money yet. So we would like a decent fund balance every year. So the ambulance fund is in good shape. It did allow for the additional transfers to the general fund and also the ambulance refurb. So the fund's in pretty good shape.
very good.
And Nancy doesn't always say that, though.
Any final questions? Thank you both so much for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to, I think we're ahead of schedule just a titch, guys. Don't cry about it.
I'm not.
All right. We're gonna be having Jody back in for housing, and we're gonna be on page 5, special revenue funds. Or at least that's what it was before we got the new packets. We'll see if it stayed that way.
Yeah, it should be the same. Page 5 starts
Okay.
housing.
Thanks for coming back, Jody.
Thanks.
Thanks for the great cupcakes,
As usual.
as usual.
As usual.
And as we're winding down, I would like to say happy birthday to Carol.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's also Kevin Janison's birthday. We
Yes,
share the
we-
same birthday.
I just heard that.
Happy birthday, Kevin.
Take a cupcake home with you.
She set one aside for me already.
Very good.
How old are you? I didn't say that, I'm sorry, disregard
That
that.
was John
Only
Henry.
kidding, only kidding.
It's always one troublemaker.
Always gotta be.
Always one.
Who likes pizza?
Look at her evil eye, you.
She likes pizza, or she likes Gio John's pizza.
Yes,
Very good.
and Happy Joe's.
And Happy Joe's, because you probably never had Happy Joe's before.
Oh, yeah, I grew up in Iowa.
That's
So
true.
I had most of my childhood birthdays at Happy Joe's.
Oh, cool.
On to housing.
On to housing.
As an intro, and since there's multiple housing programs, I won't do the kind of thing for each of them I have been doing, but on page 11, it kind of shows really the total amount that that the housing budgets have available in HUD money and other money, as well as what we're expending and providing to our residents. So the total budgeted expenditures is just over $3 million for next year. And it's broken out, Section 8 is about 64% of that, the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. Sunset Park is about 10%, Clark House is about 23%, and then the smaller Sunset Education, Home Ownership, and Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So it really is a pretty major a service that the city provides. It's through the housing. The revenues, HUD funds are 83%. Rents from the public housing units, $405,000, and various other revenue, $77,560. So it's and this just addresses the city's housing programs. This doesn't include Hershey that the city manages. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Jody.
Well, the housing is not the airport. It's not simple. So, Housing and CD shared one issue this past year, and that was turnover. Unfortunately, for housing, that's turnover in both staff and turnover in units. This has been on top of needing to adapt our processes regarding the pandemic and the interpersonal interactions that are required for many of or were previously enacted and on some level are required to complete our tasks. But we did make progress. The voucher program, we were having a struggle keeping people leasing new people up. We put 6 people on, we'd lose 6 people. And we were being as nice as possible, not kicking people off if we didn't absolutely have to. But we have finally started to make some progress on that. Until about November, we were actually hovering somewhere between 305 and 315 units months leased each month, and we are finally up above 325. I know it doesn't sound like all that much, but and again, not doing anything bad, but unfortunately we've had odd things happen. People are just suffering a bit with their health, aging, that kind of stuff. Public housing properties, unfortunately, for about a year now, we've been hovering around 145 occupied units each month. I try to put that in a positive spin, and I said, well, at least we only had 149 for about 6 months of that time, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference. So the big change has been, since the pandemic started, is that Sunset Clark has actually stabilized, and Clark House has had more vacancies. So we're hovering 6 to 7. At the end of this month, we'll actually have 8 vacant units at Clark House. That was complicated, again, by the fact that people weren't comfortable having one-on-ones, people weren't moving around. And then towards the end of the year, we actually lost our public housing manager that actually oversaw the Clark House. She moved, her husband, who actually worked for me on the other side of the house, took a job somewhere else, and she found a job up there and moved, so darn her. So we lost that staff person. So we had one housing specialist that was managing all 3 properties at the same time, and then she came down with COVID. So, you know, perfect storms. We've had a lot of them in the past year. This past fall, we did actually complete the physical needs assessment, and you all approved of the 5-year plan, which is what informed the majority of the housing budget, especially related to capital needs. So you'll see some big capital needs are identified in there, including some structural stuff at Clark House related to the flooring. We've known it's been coming, but live in denial. I'm just going with it. And then trying to get ahead of some other maintenance things that we know are coming. So we're proposing at this point to do some flooring improvements at the Sunset Park Office and Education Center. The Education Center is kids, and it is a pretty stained, even though we clean it on a regular basis, it's pretty stained and torn up. So we'll replace that. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're putting a program in place for replacement of the PTAC units, which are the in-unit heating and cooling module for the HVAC system at Clark House. They're old, and we are unable to get parts or replace them with actual equipment that fits in them. Kelly's either special orders them or modifies them. We had been sabotaging old ones that were removed, put new parts on the ones that are still existing. We're out of those units. So we're going to start by replacing 10 at a time. There are more than 100 there, so they're not just in the units, they're in the common spaces as well. But replacing those 10 will mean we have 10 that are still functioning. We can take the parts off of and repair the ones if we have other issues. And we just have 10 scheduled for each year until we get through it. Of course, by then we'll probably need to start going back to the original 10, but got to start somewhere. And well, we do have extra CARES Act money this year for both the public housing program and the housing choice voucher. We're not trying to blow it on things that we don't need, or we're trying to make sure we're planful in how that works. For our funds, we do actually have to expend them all by December 31st of this year, and I will promise that will be done. It's, but we'll keep going. So obviously another significant impact for us was that we have classes between the Sunset Park Enrichment Program and the Housing Counseling Program that are really people-centered and most often group people-centered. So we stopped those. They were the first things to stop when COVID hit. And so we were getting ready actually to restart our housing counseling program with a virtual model, like we have done with our briefings and our one-on-one meetings that are required for the voucher program or for lease intakes and that kind of thing. And then our housing counselor resigned. He actually moved to a different part of the city, so he didn't completely resign, he just moved. But we've now hired a new housing counselor who is working on getting the mandatory training to offer classes, and we hope to be offering classes late February or early March, at least a small group class for housing counseling and or rental counseling. And we haven't quite decided if that will either be social distance in person or virtual, and then some one-on-one financial management budgeting stuff, working with probably some voucher clients in addition to anybody who signs up for a housing counseling class. And that is important because we're not actually eligible to draw our housing counseling grant down. I've already told her, but I'm not gonna look at her while I talk about it. Until we can get, until she has 6 months on working for us in the housing counseling program. We hired her in October, so I'm just hoping that this all works out well. But we'll pay, right now, we're gonna pay for her with housing trust funds if necessary, so.
Jody, can you get any United Way funding for the Family Self-Sufficiency Program? It fits their new plan.
The Family Self-Sufficiency Program actually it fits in their model, and that's okay right now. So we've gone down to half-time for family self-sufficiency because we had a fluke in the numbers. And so right now what we're doing is splitting that. She's half-time family self-sufficiency and half-time housing counseling. So she's covered as long as we can go that route. She doesn't really fit into the new model in terms of what services she provides. One, because she can only provide them to voucher and public housing tenants. And two, because she's really only coordinating. She's not providing actually any educational benefit. She's not providing education or housing per se. She's just a support kind of thing. So I think it'll work out in the end. We expect to be up to full-time again with the Family Self-Sufficiency Grant next year. With that being said, we're fluid. I like to be, flexible. So I think it will work out, and it will give us time. I mean, one of the things we have been working on is how do you marry the services we provide? Like, how do we get some of our clients that are on a voucher to engage more in the housing counseling, the budgeting, the financial management stuff? So I think this will help that system. And it might help us look at the housing specialist role versus the FSS role and the housing counselor role more, a little differently to kind of figure out how it might actually fit better. Housing FSS coordinator, she does certain things, and it's just been that way. And they tie really easily, but that doesn't necessarily mean you couldn't make more of an impact if you didn't realign them some other way. So we'll keep looking at that, and with the CARES Act money, I think we're okay for this year. One of the things we did ask for in this one was an additional housing specialist, and that's because, again, with the loss of my public housing person, which when we did the realignment, we created, in addition to Andrew moving up on the community development side, we created 2 program manager spots, housing program manager spots, one for voucher and one for public housing. I don't know where that went, but so when the public housing program manager left, we kind of went back and forth. It's not a skill set that you find readily in the community, and it's not easy to learn. The housing, just to do the housing specialist, whether it's voucher or public housing, they'll tell you it's typically a 2-year time before you're actually fairly competent at doing those things, just because of the regulatory requirements. So we talked with the voucher program manager about becoming the programs manager. It's such a big difference, that S. And taking over the public housing side too. She's been with the program for a number of years. She's worked so she used to manage Hershey Manor, but she's also covered at public housing and been involved in all of those conversations and has the voucher side down obviously well. And some of that stuff does overlap. So we thought it was probably the most efficient method to give, if she was willing anyway, to take over both sides and then really step up more to be more like the second for the whole thing. So she will take over much more of the housing activity. It is a different pay grade, so it kind of goes back to what we talked about before. It's not just a title change, it is a pay grade change. But right now she does maintain a caseload of about 100 clients. So we still have something to go with that, that has to go somewhere. So we're requesting the second housing specialist, or the new housing specialist.
So is that Melissa?
Melissa would be the housing programs manager,
okay.
Yes. So, and she did agree. She used to tell me she doesn't want to do my job, so I had to kind of, come on, yes. So she agreed, and as long as you all approve that, then that's the way we'll move forward. And if you approve the housing specialist, right, this year it will actually be paid for out of CARES Act funding. But when we get the halftime, the FSS grant back up to full-time, we expect that that will relieve, there won't be a huge impact to the fund balance from that additional staff person. I don't know if I said that very well. I feel like I missed something there, but I'm not sure what it was. It might have been a longer day for me than it was for you. I'm not really sure.
We are
Listening
gonna
and
use-
working at the same time.
Yeah.
Just killed me.
So we are gonna use CARES money then for ongoing expenses, for
For this
salaries.
one, and what it really does is offset the loss of the grant for the 1 year and move, and then we'll put the other one back to full-time with the grant next year. Did I say that clearly?
It's not a situation where we're like, okay, we're gonna fund it this year, but we don't know what we're gonna do next year. There's a
Okay.
plan. There's a
Okay,
plan
because
in
I was
place.
thinking,
what I was
okay,
trying to
that
get.
didn't add up with what we did two
No.
people ago.
No, it's
Okay.
not, and we've tried to remain consistent with that,
Okay.
but this is a stopgap, that's all.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
I think the new position, the housing programs manager, we will need to amend the current year pay plan to get that in, because I think we have that starting in April.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes, both of those positions are built in for April 1 start dates, not until after the budget is completed.
And these organizational changes, they're designed to better deliver on your priorities. So I just want you to know we're in alignment with that. We're not going to, I would not recommend anything that was out of alignment with that.
And so going to that is, going back to what we talked about earlier with the reorganization as a whole, it also changes her position from I don't want to say simply, but that's the word that comes to mind, is the program management. She actually does become a supervisor. So again, she takes on some of that supervision so I can focus on how the department as a whole is addressing and implementing those strategic plan goals, so.
This might be the one team that it would be great to have an org chart, just because of the changes and stuff.
Yeah, we
between
can give you
community and
that.
housing. It
I
was
have
just-
what it was, what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a scorecard.
Absolutely.
I actually did bring something else from earlier too, to show you that, so we've added a halftime admin assistant. That's all we've added to date in terms of actual FTEs, which equals about a 0.3 person, so, just as an FYI. And
Yeah, you can see that. You'll be able to see that in some of the FTE information that you have here. And as you go along, if there are other things like that that you want to see, we can get those to you. Another thing that came to mind is that it would be good to give you a chart or something about what the capital needs out, with the capital improvement plan and the costs associated with that, because every department has a 5-year plan, and it'll help you as far as long-term planning better understand sort of what we're facing as far as expenditures coming up. So we'll get you something along those lines too. Yeah.
Thank you.
so, I think that takes me through to Hershey Manor, which, the city doesn't obviously fund the operation of Hershey Manor. Hershey Manor is its own entity. We manage it on behalf of the Hershey Manor Board. However, some of city staff is allocated to that operation and paid for through the contract to manage that service. It's primarily maintenance staff, but we do have a halftime housing specialist that is also charged to Hershey Manor, as well as a portion of Melissa's time for oversight. We do continue to struggle with the HVAC replacement. The HUD process, it continues to drive me absolutely insane. And that, along with increased vacancies at that property, I think most of you are aware that we typically have 1 or 2 a year over there. We currently have 10. And they're long-term vacancies. We have been trying and trying. At first it was people didn't want to move. People were in nursing homes, they couldn't move out because nursing homes weren't allowing them to move out. But so those two things together, if you look at your fund balance have very negative impacts on that, and that project doesn't actually have a balance. I mean, it has reserves places, but it doesn't have a safety net, because it's not allowed to have a safety net somewhere. HUD doesn't allow that. You get 12.5, that's it. So we have developed a plan and presented that to the Hershey Manor Board, and they're in concurrence, and that is, we've been renting a chiller, which is the primary reason the budget is over. It costs us $1,500 a week to rent the chiller.
And we have to pay for that?
The project does.
Okay.
So, not us, the board. The project itself pays all of the expenses, sorry. And so, but we always thought we were getting close. We were like, it was dangling out there. This year, because we're going and we have the shortfall, we are proposing to purchase it using replacement reserves. So it won't come out of cash flow, it would come out of replacement reserves. And they're going to give us a very nice discount because we have rented it for so long. And that will save about $30,000 on the operating expense. And then thanks to our new hire housing specialist with some knowledge to make this much easier and faster, she will be submitting a vacancy loss payment request to HUD Monday or Tuesday. She had to gather some information, which means we may be able to get reimbursed up to 80% of a portion of the losses for a portion of the time. So we're estimating about $20,000 there. And then to fill the gap, that 12.5 that we're allowed to have in as a safety net is called residual receipts, and we would, right, residual receipts?
Yes.
And we'll be able to draw that to make up the gap. Or we think we'll be able to draw that to make up the gap. We're asking HUD to approve that. So, so we think we do have a way to get it back into balance, because obviously it can't be this way at the end of the year. That the board has approved is feasible and will get us through while we continue to try and get the new system in place, because we had the discussion, if we have a new chiller, do we need to replace the system? And yes, we do. There are other failing parts. Again, it's a 40-year-old system that is having some issues.
Can you explain our contract with them? So how do they pay us? So do they pay us per how many people are in there? Do we get a flat fee? Because I would think we're managing it for you. We shouldn't take any losses. We should get the same amount of money, and any losses should go on the board, not have any impact on us.
So we don't make up any losses. I mean, anything that they're over, this is really kind of just informational. It's not intended to be like we have to come up with a way to make this whole, because we don't. But as the management agent, I do. And you're right. I mean, maybe I don't, but somebody has to, and since they don't have paid staff, it's us. And so we have a management contract that is, it's a HUD contract. It's not like we went out and negotiated it. HUD says this is what you're allowed. And so from the time it was built, we're paid 5% of the rent receipts each month. So we do take a loss, a reduction when the vacancies are down. And again, I don't know what else. Right now we're looking at trying to do some kind of advertisement or article to kind of draw attention to getting that. And it's not like we haven't moved people in. We have moved some people in, but the average age of the clientele at Hershey Manor is about 84. So that we are experiencing those kinds of losses, like this month, so we've put 2 in, we're gonna lose 2, one's in a nursing home, not going to come back, and one is in hospice. So, you know, it's not like stuff we can kind of stop, but.
And we're also losing people to the new senior.
Park.
Yeah.
And which troubles me. Why are we giving, I mean, I guess it makes me pause. Why are we giving such good tips to people to put us out of business and hurt ourselves?
Well, and so we have this conversation quite a bit, and in normal times, there would be some losses. You would lose some people, but it would fill up. I mean, it would do that. I think that it is still a function of COVID times. I don't believe that it's just because, I don't believe that there's so much supply that there's not need. I just think that it's the concern, and a lot of families, quite honestly, are bringing their elders in because that's where they know they can keep them safe. And so all of those things kind of combined together are.
I think it's definitely something for us to keep an eye on, though. I mean, I don't think we want to keep up with that
I would
business.
not come back to, so we have the two senior projects coming forward now. I would not come back to you until all of this were settled and say, oh, I think, yeah, this developer wants some money, give it to him. So.
Go ahead,
Well,
Peggy.
You know, I've been away from Hershey. I don't, I drive by it every day. I remember when there was all that excitement that we had a beautiful facility on Mulberry, but I wonder if it's not just COVID, because just in the last year, you see things about the water quality, the HVAC. So is it the quality of life there that's also driving it? We do have the other projects, Oak Park and the other senior housing coming up, and we need it. But why aren't we getting the 55 to 65?
They're
in
not
there?
allowed.
Okay, what age is it?
62 plus.
Okay, so I could go in there. So,
Sometimes those are rude awakenings. I'm
yeah,
like, I could move
but is
this
it that,
park
when
out.
I hear water and HVAC, I mean, locationally, it's beautiful. You've got senior resources right there, so, I think it's a marketing thing too. We need to get it up to standards, and then re-promote it, might be one of the things. Because it is that step before you might have to go to a nursing home and then long-term. But how do we promote that? I'm not against Oak Park, and my mom's in Cottage
No,
Grove.
me
and
neither, but-
they're all beautiful, and the new facilities, and we have a need, but it's not just that that we have too much inventory. There's other issues with Hershey, it sounds like.
We do not get that feedback. I mean, we have 1 to 2 tenants that have issues with the water quality, and I'm just gonna say it once again. The water quality the water is the same as we get here at City Hall. I mean, it's structurally the same. It has the same stuff in it.
But I wouldn't want to
runs-
drink that either. I mean, if I pour a bottle of water and sit it in the bathroom or on my desk, it's brown. And I don't really want to drink that.
I don't get, here?
Here. Oh,
I
yeah.
haven't noticed that.
I fill up a bottle of water to water my plant, and it's,
But it's
nasty.
Muscatine water. I mean, it's the same water they have at MPW, I'm just gonna say.
and my water at home is fine. I think it's the pipes.
Well, it's not our pipe.
It's not the same water? No. So our water at home is different than this water?
It tastes so much different than anywhere else in Muscatine. Vineyard's water is the same, so they purchased a water conditioner. And that sort of rectified that problem. But it's not the same water.
It's not.
You're telling me that the water I'm drinking is different than the water that's here?
Correct.
And
How can
I'm
that
not
be?
saying there's
All the
not
same
some
system.
difference in what comes out.
What
terms
goes
of what-
in?
Taste the water.
But what is in it in terms of, and you might be better at answering these questions, is so the two that discolor it are magnesium and iron, and they are substantially the same here in PW and Hershey Manor. I mean, there is no statistical difference in the composition of the water. I don't know what else goes into water because I have to rely on them, but it's been tested over and over. And the other thing and so one of the things we have is that the building being nicely located in this safe spot at the bottom of the hill actually has some impact on the water because everything flows downhill. So it's flushing, but it's,
Sedimentation
so-
that collects to the lines.
yeah.
Yeah, so all of the sources you've talked about, they're safe to drink. They passed the required tests, and I confirmed this myself with Gage, and I met with Rob Aubrey, who is the maintenance supervisor. That doesn't necessarily mean that in some areas of town or in some buildings with older plumbing, that they have aesthetic issues. A lot of times water can have odor and color, but be perfectly safe to drink. And in addition to that, layer on top of that, that some people have more sensitivities to some of those things than others. So I think that's some of what is happening here, but I can assure you that the water, according to all the tests they've done, is safe to eat or to drink. But that being said, it doesn't mean that there aren't some aesthetic issues. And I think what you're getting at, Peggy, around just the age of the building, the fact that we're getting these better, more new units in the community, all couple that with COVID, it's all of that is driving this lower vacancy rate. So I don't think Hershey seems to be, and what I'm learning, a very complicated situation. It might be good, and one of the reasons why I wanted Jody to touch on it here, although you don't really have, these aren't general funds that are being used, you get a lot of complaints from Hershey. And so I wanted you to understand what all they were working on. Maybe it's something that we need to come back to the council and talk a little bit more in depth about how all the housing works, these three projects, and then talk more about sort of what the city's role is in each. Yeah.
Because I gotta tell you, I mean, just my personal preference, I like the appeal of Hershey. It's garden-like, it's a park-like setting. As opposed to Oak Park, the facilities on the inside are very, very nice. It's gonna be some personal appeal, and it's nice that we have some age gaps in between. Like one accepts earlier, one's 63, which soon. But it's like, we've just got to market it better. I mean, we keep promoting, we need more housing, we need more senior housing, and we need it spread out throughout town, which is perfect, but what are those pockets and who do they serve? Well, we got to get this up to standard. I see we have some money budgeted for some refresh in here, it looks like, rehabilitation.
Well, at Hershey Manor, so a lot of the units are almost new now.
Perfect.
Because they've turned over in the past year. So when we turn over a unit, there's painting, there's flooring if it's deteriorated. That building, if we need to put in new cupboards and that kind of stuff. So a lot of them are spruced up to some degree. We're looking at the flooring, but until we get through the HVAC system, which will be a nice amenity because it is like, now it's just like the old school, turn on the heat at October 15th and turn on the cold, but it's not, until then, we don't actually have resources to do a lot of other upgrades to it.
But we don't pay it, right? They do.
Right.
We hear
And
about it.
I have a hard time because it's we. I mean,
Yes.
again, because I'm overseeing it on a day-to-day basis. So when I say we, I mean housing. I don't necessarily mean the city as a whole. So it's not coming out of this budget. But in the budget, we have to budget for the turnover.
So you have to manage their budget for Hershey Manor, Hershey Manor. You don't just collect your wages and do the work.
No,
You're also doing administrative stuff.
Yes.
Have you ever done a cost study to see, you've spent so much time on this HVAC thing and we're getting 5% per unit? We're losing money.
Go to the board.
And
We're losing money, yeah.
and I won't disagree with that it is not, that we do not spend, at least on some weeks, more time than we are paid for. But it's also affordable housing, and I think and HUD regulations that, quite honestly, make the public housing regulations look like fun. So, I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Yeah, there's no exit
And there's nobody
strategy.
else in the
It's
community
difficult.
that's ready to
There's not
pick up.
really a way to exit from this responsibility. We've talked about it a little bit in time, but really there's not a lot of great alternatives to it.
It's about maintaining the facility as an option available to our residents. And so.
And we appreciate your heart and soul going into that and us having that opportunity. I mean, that's what we should do. So it's just that certain bigger projects that come up, like the flooring replacement or the HVAC, if there was a way to recoup some of the project management costs.
Oh, yeah.
Separate from the normal fee, that
Right,
would be.
that's where I was headed.
Well, and bear in mind that every dollar that goes into so the only thing we potentially lose out on is some of my time probably. Like there's none of that other stuff that's getting paid out, well, maybe maintenance time.
I do have a question on the P-tax system.
Yes.
Something a little different. Are those you're sort of replacing what are more traditional hotel? Is that what's there now? Those
Yes.
are awful?
Clark House has
And they go
hotel
up in these go up in the, like, higher on the wall? Because I think we just replaced a couple with these, and they're more energy efficient, easier to use, and they do heat and air conditioning. They're more like
For which ones?
for apartment air conditioning units, for
So
PTAC?
at Clark House, yes, we have PTACs.
Okay, is
And,
that the Clark House here?
yeah.
Yep, sorry.
At
Okay.
Hershey Manor, what they'll be actually replaced with is a flow refrigerant. It's either VFR or VRF.
Okay.
And so it does upgrade that system. They have a smaller in-unit equipment. It's not quite like the PTAC, like a hotel. But it does, the new system will allow Joe in Unit A to turn on his air conditioner and Mary in Unit B to turn on her heat in May, if that's necessary.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
so it is a big upgrade there. And it should be much more efficient.
Sorry. Hershey Manor used to be a place that everybody wanted to be, and there was a wait list, and it was fancy, and that's where people wanted to go. And I think, if I'm hearing you correctly, that's where Peggy was going. What did
I
we
would love it.
do, or what have we not done to not have it still be appealing where we're having all of these openings and we can't give them away? But I almost think the board needs to have some responsibility here. You know, I mean, what is their buy-in? They just sit back and let,
They are more active now than when I started. They are more engaged in the conversation. And I mean, for the first couple of years, we had to have conversations that they owned it. So like, well, no, we're just the board. No, you own this. If HUD comes looking for somebody, it's you, it's not me. Probably 18 months ago now, we had to have a conversation. We're talking about the HVAC systems, like, why doesn't the city just put it in and then they can get paid back out of their friends? City doesn't own this, the city doesn't pay for this. So,
and maybe they could know that, you know, we don't have to do this. We're doing this as a service to the community, but, you know, at some point. Dwayne, I'm sorry, you had something.
Yeah, wouldn't Melissa be a good resource for information? She used to manage it.
yeah, she is, I mean, she's very involved in Hershey Manor. And actually, the new housing specialist that we hired actually comes from managing another HUD multifamily out of town. So she has a lot of experience and is really good at that as well. Regulatory-wise, we're good. I think that there are a couple of tenants that have some specific issues that they make very public, because the water issue, again, the determination has kind of been that it's because we sit at the bottom of the hill, the sediment settles actually in the public pipe, not ours, because we have new water heaters and we have copper pipes, so they're not lead galvanized, whatever that stuff is that peels off and rots through. We don't have those kinds of pipes. I know it's Saturday, sorry. And if it's only those 2 units, the first 2 units that get the water that actually experience the severe discoloration 99% of the time. And if you let them run for typically it's less than a minute, but no more than 3, you get clear water out of them. So they clear out, and so it's balancing people and physical services at the same time. I mean, I don't have an answer.
Melissa. They love Melissa, the tenants. I hear nothing
And I
but-
think they'll love Katie too. She's really very personable, and so, and I can't really say much.
Well, I'm kind of with the mayor. If we're only getting 5%, why are we even there?
I once thought we could get a raise and had told me no, so.
But they could give us extra for working on the
They-
HVAC
now-
issue and things like that,
Now, be
couldn't they?
clear, they do actually, so in addition to the 5%, they pay directly for the maintenance staff and for the halftime housing specialist. So that's in addition to the 5%. So that's why I'm like, it's my time that really is the extra that they get out of us. So,
And that management fee, it's calculated at the 5% of rents. We had been taking 10% of Jody out of that amount, and then what was left was revenue to the general fund to fund accounting services. I think now we switched that to 10% of Melissa. So it's funding 10% of Melissa. And then where was I going? Some of this is HUD restrictions. Jody was successful in getting the Hershey board to contribute $20,000 to this project last fiscal year, and that's shown on the fund statement on page 25.
To what project?
Hershey.
The whole budget?
To
To the engineering for the HVAC.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah, so
The
they
HVAC
did
part.
contribute. They don't have a lot of separate resources, though.
So, and it might be easy to go back and remember that Hershey Manor Board was put together specifically to build a project. There was not a structure that said, oh, we exist and this fits in our mission, we're gonna go do it. It was a group of community members in specific roles. So Mike Johansson and, who was here then? Was Dick here then?
Jack Pates was here.
So, and, you know, other people that they were working with said, oh, we really need some senior affordable housing. And so they put together a board, and thus the confusion on who owns it, because it was approved and the city's just been doing stuff going along, so it's been always, and it's not abnormal for these types of properties. I actually work with a public housing director on the east side of the west side of the state, who has a very similar project, only hers is like 4 years old, so.
Do we not want to own it?
We can't own it. I mean, in theory, you could, if they wanted to sell it or whatever, we could look at that, but you can't, because it is a HUD-funded project and contract with Hershey Manor Convalescent Home, they, it's not as easy as saying the city's gonna take ownership of it, so.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's difficult to exit the responsibility. I totally agree with what you're saying about the level of compensation versus the level of resources it takes. It's how do you get out of that? And not leave them totally high and dry, right? That's the concern, yeah.
Maybe we could work towards, you know, if it is gonna take a while to get out of that, or to, I'm not saying that we don't do it anymore, but I think we need some kind of a plan, because it just keeps, it's like we're not getting anywhere positive.
Mayor? Yeah. I wonder if this would be a great in-depth session in the future to understand everything, all the housing initiatives in town, whether they're city-owned and managed through HUD, independence, and understanding our level and the different guidelines. I didn't know that it was 63. I really thought it was 55. But having an understanding, and then where our involvement stands, because one of our goals is to have great affordable housing for all residents. Will this focus on this and at least understand? Because Jody, I mean, you guys are doing an awesome job of just juggling the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And understanding it, and it just drives me nuts. But maybe, can we understand that in the future? I think it'd be a great thing, and then we could decide. I mean, we got these folks over here putting in beautiful facilities too, like Oak Park and Cottage Grove and the new ones coming in, but how do we also keep ours growing? Because losing 10, that's a chunk of change that's not coming into our pocket.
And I will tell you, so we've lost, currently there have been, I think we decided 3 that moved to Oak Park. We've actually, the majority of losses have been deaths or nursing homes.
Because of your age
So,
and maybe COVID. and stuff, but just understand it. Could we put that on?
Yeah, we can do that.
The total number of accommodations.
What do you mean, 50? Oh, the number of units is 50, yeah, 50.
20% lost in 1 year.
50.
Yeah. 50 units, right? Did you
Yep.
say 50?
Yes.
And then we lost 10, when we usually lose 1 or 2. So we lost
Well,
20%
we've
1
lost,
year?
so it's been more than 10 because we have refilled some as we go. So I think the total is like 13.
And we make $196,000 in rentals a year, and we get 5% of that, $10,000.
No, we get
It's-
5% of the 833, right?
5%, so there's the dwelling units, and then HUD makes up the difference up to the amount of the
Oh, so we're
rent
getting 5% of that
of the
total.
total
Oh,
of those
okay.
two.
I was gonna say, for $9,800, you can forget this noise.
You're like, I'm leaving.
But I do think Dwayne had a really good point about the water softener thing, because this water issue really is, whether we think they shouldn't be concerned with it or not, they are. And so it's an ongoing, my mother buys water for everything. So every week, it's traipsing in cases and cases. She makes coffee with bottled water, she washes her dishes with bottled water, she does everything with bottled, and she's not the only one. And so that quality of life for them really is an ongoing concern. And even though we tell them it's safe to drink when it's brown, they don't want to drink it.
Just bearing in mind that, so depending upon what kind of equipment you have, so we have had the conversation about if there is some system we could install that would do it. The sediment is coming in regardless. I mean, you can't,
So there's no way to get rid of that.
yes. Because it's exterior, it's in the exterior pipes
Yeah.
coming in.
Yeah.
It's coming through the water mines.
So it gets circulated through whatever circulation
Let me-
system.
It's just like when they flush the systems, and every year, you get done, as soon as you get done flushing the water mains around town, you get brown water for several hours, at least I do. And if you have a filtration system, which I don't understand why we couldn't have a filtration system on an incoming line for the water, it'd take care of the problem. And somebody has to change it, it becomes more maintenance. But the filtration systems take care of everything nowadays. I don't understand why there's not a filtration system.
Yeah.
Let me,
That would
yeah,
fix
let me
that.
get with, because I did speak with Gage Houston about this and sort of their replacement priorities within their distribution system. It relates to that. But I honestly, I don't want to give you bad information, so I need to go back and review this issue and get you something on that. I do think the in-depth's a good idea. And one thing also I'd want them to touch on is their maintenance management system, because I know you did get calls about maintenance issues, but they have a work order system that they use, and they have goals around how quickly they can respond. I mean, they may not be able to correct the issue, but how quickly they respond. So they are measuring that and trying to address those things. So let's schedule a meeting to come back to council and give you an overview.
Thank you.
And it sounds like I heard you say that some of the water problem might be public pipes, not our pipes. And if that's the case, maybe we can leverage assistance from MPW to work on some of that.
And maybe I'm speaking out of turn. So again, it's the stuff that's flowing through the pipes, the gravity pulls down to our level. So, and we do actually flush the whole system at least once a quarter, and if not once a month, depends on how things are going.
My comment is on filtration system, there's a system set up on the incoming pipe that catches that stuff coming into the building, so it doesn't even get to the residents. It's filtrated out before it gets there, and that's an easy system to install. I don't know how big it has to be and how expensive it is, but it's certainly something that should be looked into.
Yeah, you cut the pipe here and you cut it here and you just slap the thing in the middle and then you just change the filters.
Try not to know some of these things. I'm
We'll
just
come
saying.
back to you. I don't want to
That's
give
why he
anyone.
does tech
yeah.
support and not pipes.
I imagine it's a matter of you can do something, but at what cost is the question.
Yeah,
of it.
exactly.
So, yeah.
Kind of like your refrigerator, your water for your refrigerator door has that little white tube thing.
But HUD, you would think
Where
that
it is
that
for
would want, they'd
everybody.
want that. You would think that HUD would want that system simply because it's their property and it's their maintenance upkeep. If you're constantly having to pay for somebody to come in and do something because the blinds are plugging in an apartment or
You
they got
should
dirty.
probably not apply logic to this.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I'm sorry, I forget we're dealing with a
And
government
Jody,
agency.
we know this is a lot of pressure on you, and we don't mean for that to be aimed at you in any way.
Not
We-
even to hurt all.
No.
Right.
It's the issue, it's not, we
trust
know
me,
you're
I
doing
get it.
all you can, and I know you've spent a ton of time on this HVAC business that still isn't solved, through no fault of yours. Anything else on housing? Bed bugs, we didn't talk
You
about
just
bed
remembered
bugs.
that, Lee.
Oh, I actually have.
Do we have to?
So, what I didn't say was, another thing we did was, again, going back to improving customer services and ability for people to do, is we did move to an online waiting system for everything but Hershey, because it has its own application process. This one is specifically tied to our client management process for public housing and vouchers. And so if you look at our, there's a flyer, if you look at our door across the street, it's actually hanging there. There's a QR code if somebody comes in. We're working on an actual flyer to send out to all of the organizations so they can hang it on their wall or hand it out or whatever they want to do, so that everybody who's in need. And we actually have had, at the public housing properties specifically, a huge uptick. It's been running for about 2 weeks now, a huge increase in the number of applications we're getting. You can do it on a cell phone, you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on a computer, and then we're working with John to install an older computer to make it a kiosk out here in our lobby, so that if people don't have that, and then when we move to the online permits for CD, they can apply right there and walk through it and stuff.
So how are we doing on controlling the bed bugs at all of these places?
The only, somebody knock on some wood. The only real, it continues to be Clark House. I mean, we've had a couple at
thought so.
Sunset, we've had a couple at Hershey, but we really only get them at Clark House. Last year you approved some additional equipment. We are ordering that now. We've had both shortages in staff, in maintenance staff, so the ability to dedicate that time, as well as some of the severity of the infestations, because one of the barriers is getting clients to tell us as soon as that they have them. We actually have one unit that is the center of the last few, and we thought that there had to be something. There was something this tenant was doing that or someplace he was going or whatever that was causing it, but staff has talked to him, and and he's like, I only go to this one place, and then I come home. He's kind of a solitary person, so he doesn't have visitors, and so they felt like they believed that he was not doing anything to encourage it. So we're working with the vendor now to kind of figure out where are they come from. Like, has he gotten them and now they're in his car? So when he drives to that one meeting a week he goes to, he brings them back in, because they're adults. And typically adults, you're looking at 30 to 60 days before you actually have new adults. And we've been treating this unit, it feels like every 30 days, if
Heat
not.
treatment, are we doing heat treatment on it?
We have done heat treatment on it multiple times. We've done heat treatment 4 times in, I think, a little more than a year. So, and like I said, we just don't know where they're coming from, but the adjacent units don't have it, so it's almost gotta be something so if it is his car, we'll have his car treated, he'll pay, we'll do a repayment plan to get it taken care of so that he doesn't have to deal with that either, so. But it's not better. I was
A
gonna
couple
say, I
years
feel like it's
ago-
better, but not better.
We were spending $20,000-$30,000. Are we still at that level?
I didn't bring those books, I knew I should have.
Or close, or,
I wanna say, actually, we have spent about 20 grand.
because I know our plan was when we got the heat treatment, we thought we were gonna be able to save a lot because they were just going to the neighbors and up and
Right.
down, and then, so we
And
talked.
when we started heat treating, we did see an improvement in their mobility. And so then we bought the heat treatment, and we bought the heat treatment that our building would facilitate, so we could treat 2 units at a time. What we found, again, this goes back to how quickly we know about an infestation, is that we were needing to treat 4 units or 6 units at a time, because they had already moved that far. And so we weren't, So we were doing a couple units and the other was doing a couple units. The equipment that you approved for last year actually adds a couple of heat units so that we can do at least 3 units at a time, which is almost always the minimum you're going to do anymore. And it improves, makes some, upgrades the electrical service so that we can actually service those additional heat units. And again, this is kind of like talking about pipes, don't ask me about electricity. So that we can actually have, if we plugged it in now, it would just blow the circuits and we'd be, everybody, the elevators would probably kill us then. So, so that we can do those 3 units. But like I said, the gentleman we hire that does the heat treatment, the vendor, he actually is really good about working with us when he'll do some and we'll do some if we have huge numbers. But like I said, once COVID started and everybody was in more, when they got it, they didn't really stay in. They moved around to each other's units more. So it spread between the units. So when COVID first started in those first few months, we had a couple of big outbreaks, and I think one of them was 6 heat-treated units, and then the surrounding units get chemically treated, which is the other piece we'll always have, but.
So we hire this guy, we contract with this guy, we bought the heat equipment, he uses our heat equipment, no.
He has his own, so when we hire him, it's either because we don't have the staff to because you have to man it on some level, and install it, and ours is also much slower than his. So, and again, the new heat treatment will help with that as well.
So who runs ours then?
Rob and his maintenance staff.
Our own staff, okay.
Yes. So far this year, the total expended in pest control is $17,745, and I would say probably 15 of that is pest control, is bed bugs in the 2021 budget.
Are we still doing the every 30-day inspection on everybody? And are we catching them that way since they're not being forthcoming about it?
We have quarterly inspections.
Quarterly.
And we do catch some that way. I think there are a lot of things at play. So we do quarterly inspections, which did seem to be slow catching stuff and slowing it down enough. What we know is that our vendor and every vendor we talk with actually is also busier, is having more demand on the service. So I don't think it's just us that's seeing the increase.
So do we expect it might even be more this year?
No, I think that we'll get, I don't think it'll be more than normal. I think that, because like I said, we're ordering the equipment now, and so we should be able to get on top of it better. And like I said, some of that comes back to the turnover, and if the turnover is slowing down, then they'll have more time to do those things as well. So.
On another note, I wanted to thank you for working with the community and helping to be that hub for distributing the CARES money to the food pantries in town. I know you put a lot of work into that too, and working on the task force for the, what do we call that 4 o'clock meeting on Thursdays? I don't know either.
4 o'clock meeting on
But I know
Thursdays.
you've done a lot to help with that.
So I think that it's great that there were services to be resources we could access, and I think that some of the stuff it will come out, will help in the future because that was CDBG funds. And what I didn't realize is that in my previous life I administered $3+ million CDBG grants, and they were less work than this $53,000 sub grant. So and not like with the nonprofits, but just complying with what the state wanted. But I think it puts us in a decent place to understand when we go and pursue, because they do have money for rehabbing homes and that kind of stuff. When we pursue those things, what we're getting into, and we're a little more prepared for. Heck, at least now we have the policies adopted. They don't have to do that again. So until they change them. So I think it's good, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Thank you. Well, that can,
Forever.
John's ready to leave.
He's leaving.
Gee, Manetly, John. Uh-huh.
He's breaking the chair over there.
Yeah, any final comments,
Thanks for that,
anyone,
Amy.
for the day?
Oh, great stuff.
Yes, we will, meet up again on Tuesday at 5:30, and we're gonna go over Parks is gonna have that whole night. 5:30 to 8:30 right here. Cinda, what's on the menu? At 5, okay, good idea. Eat before we start, good idea. Final, happy birthday to Carol.
Carol?
And Kevin at home. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Dwayne.